Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on supporter engagement, a really important topic for all of us. We are going to learn how to transform your supporters into superheroes. We're going to learn how to engage with our supporters in a way that is helpful and mutually beneficial and in a way they want to be engaged with. So yeah, before we get started, I just want to again mention that this is a webinar hosted by causevox. We run webinars every week just to give you all the type of best practice information that you can use to equip your team and convert more donors every year. So yeah, we have a great lineup today, 3 amazing speakers, and I'm so excited to have them with us, and I'm going to get to that in just a moment. A bit of housekeeping, that this webinar is being recorded, and you will be receiving the slides and the recording afterward next week, or maybe sometime tomorrow, depending. So yeah, I'm so happy to have you all here with us. I know it's July 6th. Happy belated Independence Day to our folks here in the US. And I know it's summer, and thank you so much for being so dedicated to continue to learn about how to make your nonprofit work flourish. So today's schedule, we will get started in just a few minutes with Kenny Sigler, who will be discussing building partnerships with the development committee. This is a big one, right? And then at 1 p.m., we are going to turn towards our volunteers with Gung Wang, who is going to lead us in best practices for donor and volunteer engagement. And we're going to wrap up our time with the lovely Julie Edwards, who will be discussing how to cultivate your relationships with your first-time donors. So you can just keep an eye on the time. We just have 3 webinars, one at 12 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Eastern, and 2 p.m. Eastern. You can stay for all of the sessions, or you can come and go as you please. Again, the slides and recording will be sent to all registrants. Before we get started, I just want to welcome all of you here and definitely chat us in. Your name, where you're from. We want to hear from you throughout today's webinar, all of our sessions. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can drop them in your Q&A panel anytime throughout each session. And in the meantime, I would just want to welcome everyone again, and maybe let us know, what are your summer plans? Have you traveled already? Do you have plans to travel? Thank you for spending a summer day with us at causevox on our webinar. So a little bit about causevox as we wait for everyone to join and chat us in, where you're from, your name, your organization, and something fun you plan to do for summer, this summer, or have done already. I will just do a brief introduction about causevox for those of you who are new with us. So causevox is a digital fundraising platform, and we are designed to help nonprofits get up and running very seamlessly to convert more donors year round. And we do that by housing all of your fundraising strategies under one roof. That can be mobile donation forms and campaigns and ticketing, peer-to-peer. We help you house everything in one place and give you a really easy way to report on the data. We also provide one-on-one support for all users and apply, top-rated fundraising education for everyone in the form of guides, templates, webinars like today's, and also courses on our website. So you can be having the best-in-class information for your fundraising. So again, just in summary, we replace any outdated software like a clunky like PayPal button, or having the need to have multiple platforms to run fundraising online. So you can house everything in one roof and have a really sleek, streamlined page and mobile optimized page for all of your donations and event fundraising. Again, with our donation form, We do have Apple Pay and Google Pay, Venmo, PayPal, and ACH bank transfer, as well as your traditional debit and credit card, just to give your donors a lot more options. You can run pledges, one-time gifts, and recurring gifts, and all of this comes with the auto receipting and customized branding. You can sell tickets. So you can sell tickets in connection with your donations when you're running donations on like a peer-to-peer or crowdfunding campaign. And then of course your peer-to-peer, we have best-in-class peer-to-peer to help you acquire new donors through an easy automated way for users to sign up and share their page with their friends and family. So if you're interested in learning more, if you need, maybe you need a donation platform, we would encourage you to schedule a demo with me. You can watch one of our recorded demos or just schedule a live demo with me. And I am going to drop that in the chat possibly if my computer would work, but I don't think it's going to. But we're going to try anyway. Oh, yay. Hello, everyone who chatted in. So good to see you all. And oops. So yes, as I was saying, my computer is a little bit slow right now. I'm going to get this. Yes, I will. Here we go. Here's our demo link. If you want more information about fundraising tips and education, you can subscribe to our blog as well. We have free resources that go out every week. So you want to stay up on that so that you can, hear from more of our fundraising leaders. And so right now I want to stop talking and introduce our first speaker of today. This is Kenny Sigler, CFRE, founder and CEO of 5-Tool Fundraising. He has such an extensive background in helping nonprofits not only work with their committee, but also with capital campaigns and such. So he has a lot of success, and can't wait to have him share his tips with us today. So I just want to give a warm welcome to Kenny, and please chat him in some amazing emojis and welcomes.
Thanks, Jenna. Before you run off, Jenna, let me go ahead and get my screens up and so that you can confirm that everybody can see and hear me clearly. So give me 1 second.
Sure.
I know this is always tricky. No matter how many times I've done it, I always okay. All right, so Jenna, can you see the first slide? Can you see the title slide here?
Yes, I can. It looks great.
Okay. Okay, and let me see. This is the part I always, okay. Can you see it scrolling through the slides?
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, thank you for confirming that.
Yeah.
Try to avoid some technical difficulties here.
Yeah, enjoy.
Well, yeah, thank you, Jenna, for the introduction, and thank you all for tuning in. Do people say tuning in anymore? I feel like that's an outdated thing. Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to talk to you all about development committees today, because as Jenna said, we are now in the month of July, and so we are officially in the second half of 2023, believe it or not. And I don't know about you, but I love a good mile marker. I love a good opportunity to say, oh, it's this point in time. It's a good opportunity to evaluate where we are and where are the progress that we've made throughout the year, and what things we need to do in the second half of the year to put us in a position to reach our fundraising goals. And this might be an opportunity for you to look at what you're doing with your development committee and start to implement a few things that could help strengthen and build engagement with your development committee. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to cover, we're going to give you some real practical tips in 3 areas that will help you with your development committee. And so we've already done an introduction. So these are the 3 areas that we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about simple tips in the areas of purpose and expectations, development planning, and committee meetings. That's obviously a big one. But before we jump in, let me set a foundation real quick. You'll notice a theme throughout the presentation, and it's actually more than just a theme. This is a core principle in our company. You may even call it a mantra that we have, but it is the power of simplicity. So you'll hear me say the word simple throughout the presentation, and that's because it really is important. 10 years ago, I read this book called Insanely Simple, The Obsession That Drives Apple's Success. And the whole book was helpful. And as someone who really was passionate about simplifying things that were complicated, this book really resonated with me. And one of the quotes in the book that I love to keep in my mind is this one: be mindful of the fact that every time you attempt to communicate more than one thing, you're splintering the attention of those you're talking to. Even if it's necessary to deliver multiple messages, find a common theme that unites them all and push hard on that idea. The more you can minimize your proposition, the more attractive it will be. I feel like this is something that a lot of nonprofits need to keep in mind, especially when it comes to fundraising, and not only in terms of the message, but the things that you prioritize and the things that you work on with your development committee. So let me be clear about one thing. When we use the term simple, it does not mean easy. Simple does not mean that it's a quick fix. Sometimes simple steps can mean those things, but it takes a great deal of effort and sometimes time in order to take something that's complicated, simplify it, and maintain that simplification. And I know how difficult that is in fundraising. It's hard enough to raise money, and it's real easy for things to get overcomplicated, and it can be overwhelming with all the information, with all the things that you have to do, that by simplifying what you're doing and focusing on the right things, it can really help so many nonprofits reach your fundraising goals and take your fundraising to the next level. So that's sort of the theme of the presentation today. And here we go. Okay, here we go. So let's talk about establishing a purpose and expectations with your development committee. So as we start this section, I want you in the chat, just yes or no, how many of you watching this in this webinar have an articulated charter or purpose statement for your development committee? So if you'll take a second to type in yes or no, I'll be watching the chat. Okay, yes, no, not sure. No, okay. No, I'm sorry. So that's pretty common. Most organizations do not have an articulated charter or purpose statement for the development committee, and I get it. There's so much going on. We're all in the weeds. We're focused on the day-to-day, that it's difficult to find the time and to even think about taking a step back, looking at the big picture, thinking high level, and helping your development committee understand what its purpose is. And when you think about it, in your role with your organization, it's very important to understand first what the purpose is, so that you know what activities, what strategies you need in order to be successful. Our development committees are no different. So I've given you an example here of the framework of a charter or a purpose statement that you can look at and use for your own development committee. So let's look at this one that we have here. The AFC Richmond Foundation has an operating revenue budget of $2 million. 67% or 1.34 million of that comes from charitable giving. The development committee is responsible for building a culture of giving, providing oversight to the plans and implementation of fundraising efforts, and monitoring progress regularly. So let's break this purpose statement down in two parts. You'll see the first statement of that says we establish an operating budget of 2 million and that 67% of that comes from charitable giving. I really like to put that up front in the purpose statement for a couple of reasons. And obviously that's something that would be customized for your organization that you would update every year. And in fact, Julie, the presenter I think in the third session, we were talking before the session started about how many nonprofits don't even have an operating budget or have a budget. So first of all, you need a budget in order to do something like this. But I like building that in the front end of a purpose statement because it delivers a couple of key pieces of information right up front, and it's real clear and easy to understand. So right up front, you know exactly how much revenue the organization plans to come in and how much of that is charitable giving. So just in that one quick purpose statement, if you get nothing else, you know the AFC Richmond Foundation has a $2 million revenue budget, and of that, 67% comes from charitable giving. That's valuable information right there. So I like to have that kind of upfront to deliver some clear information. And then with that, and you know the context, we can give the development committee really 3 solid, simple purposes that everyone can understand. They build a culture of giving, they provide oversight to the plans and the implementation, and they monitor progress regularly. So for all of you that don't have a purpose statement for your development committee, articulate one like this. Use this as a framework so that your development committee members have an understanding of why this committee exists. So let's talk about some expectations. If the slide will go over, here we go. So once we have a clear purpose for the development committee, one common question that I get asked a lot is, okay, what do we expect from the committee members? And so keeping with this theme of being simple, clear, and effective, you may have a whole list of expectations for your committee members, and there's nothing wrong with that. But let's be clear about 4 things that development committee members need to do well. First of all, they need to give personally. We've heard this before, that you can't go out and ask for a gift if you haven't given yourself. That's true. It's important to lead by example. We all understand that. What I will add to this part is I do not believe in the give or go get model. I know a lot of development committees and boards will have a policy that each member is expected to either give themselves or go raise a certain amount of money. I don't like that philosophy. I don't like that approach because certainly with development committee members, you should feel passionate. You should feel enough passion and want to support the organization where you're wanting to give and support the mission of the organization. You shouldn't have development committee members who are looking to go get the money in place of their own charitable giving. So every committee member should be expected to give personally. They should bring a willingness to learn best practices. They should help the organization build relationships, and they should attend meetings. That's another important part of it. But when we set a foundation and a floor for clear expectations of our development committee members, these are the top 4. Give, learn, build relationships, and come to meetings. Now, those are expectations for the committee members. Here's something not a lot of organizations do that could help you set yourself apart from other organizations in your community. And that is set expectations for yourself. Let your development committee members know what to expect from you. So here are 3 things that'll help you strengthen the relationship that you have with members of your development committee. Number 1, that you will never ask them to leverage their personal or professional relationships. Keep in mind that some of your development committee members may have had some unfortunate and unpleasant experiences on other development committees where they're asked to hit up their friends for gifts, go talk to their neighbors, whatever your book club list, who's in your book club, give us those names so that we can put them on our mailing list, and we're going to give you some material to go ask them for gifts. So let your committee know up front that you will not ask them to leverage their personal or professional relationships just for the sake of a gift. We can build relationships with that network, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but we're not going to ask them to leverage their relationships. Another expectation you can set with them is that you will not ask them to do anything that they are not comfortable with. I know there's a lot of material out there that talks about what all development committee members should do, shouldn't do. They've got to do this or they got to get off. And there's some truth in that. But what's not effective is trying to force development committee members into doing something that they're not comfortable with. The goal should be to build up their comfort level and to show them and model good fundraising yourself. And if you have committee members that you can work with to model that, help other people increase their comfort level to build relationships. Don't force them to do something they're not comfortable with. It's like pushing a rope. It's not going to work. And ultimately, your committee members are not going to have a pleasant experience serving on the committee. And that's not something that we're striving for. So make sure that you understand that you're going to work with their comfort level. Development committee members and board members, they're chess pieces. They're not checkers pieces. They all have their own skill set, their own network, their own comfort levels that they're bringing to the table. And you want to work with them, not dictate to them what they have to do. And the third expectation that you can set is that you'll be respectful of their time by making meetings meaningful and productive. Development committee members have probably been to so many other meetings where you just come, you hear reports, and you talk about a thing or two. They last way too long, and then they're gone. Now, towards the end of the session, we're going to talk about the framework for an effective development committee meeting, but let them know up front that you're not going to ask them to leverage their relationships. You're not going to ask them to do anything that they're not comfortable with, and that you'll be respectful of their time by making the committee meetings meaningful and productive. And we're going to give you a framework for that. So let's talk about development planning, because that is another area that people want to know about. Is not only how do I build a plan, but how does my development committee help with in the planning process? And there's a lot of material out there, and you've probably seen and heard it about how it's the development committee's responsibility to come up with a fundraising plan for your organization. And you'll notice in the purpose statement for a development committee, we said that they provide oversight. They don't write the plan. And I think that's a big misconception that people have, is that the development committee should write the plan. When we say the plan, I'm talking about a comprehensive, typically an annual fund development plan. There's a misconception that the development committee needs to write that. And what we have to understand is that the development committee is unique. You probably have a finance committee that provides advice and guidance on the organization's financing and accounting. And typically those committee members are, they have experience in that field. You may have a human resources committee with committee members who have HR experience, and they're able to use that experience to advise and guide the strategies and the activities of the organization in that area. Fundraising is really different. Chances are your development committee is comprised of members who have very little, in many cases, absolutely zero fundraising experience. So we can't expect them to come up with a fundraising plan. And because they may have had unpleasant or just bad experiences in the past, we don't want them to bring those activities to the table, thinking they might be good and effective fundraising strategies, but we in the field know that those aren't effective and in some cases may be unethical. So we have to understand that development is different, that usually the people on our committee don't have the experience to come up with a plan. And so we as nonprofit professionals, as fundraising professionals, need to take the lead in the creation and the development of a plan. It's kind of like a dance. That's what I see many development directors do. They're trying to work with their development committee to come up with a plan. The development committee's looking to the development director for a plan, and you're kind of dancing, but no one's taking the lead. And you're kind of looking to the other person to take the lead. And so what you end up with is a real clumsy dance that typically happens. We're the fundraising professionals. We're in these webinars, we're learning, we're looking at the data. We have the experience and sometimes the scars to know how to build a plan. And we do that in partnership with our development committee. And again, that's why we say that they provide the oversight in our purpose statement, that we're the ones that can put the draft of a plan together and show our development committee what a good fundraising plan is based on best practices. So let's look at, if my slide can come over here. Oh, here we go. So let's look at 5 simple components of a plan that you should emphasize, that you should spend time with your development committee. The first, goals and metrics. Again, I'm going to talk about the conversation we were having before the session started with Julie about not having a budget and not knowing what your fundraising goal is. The development committee needs to be fully aware of what the fundraising goal is and what the organization plans to measure throughout the year. That is very important. It's a foundational piece. And we also need to talk about leadership. What do we mean by leadership? Well, what skill sets do we have on the development committee? How are we using the development committee to support the board's activities? Your organization may have a strategic plan. And in that strategic plan, it may map out what the fundraising goals are for the next several years. The development committee needs to be aware of some of those leadership decisions, the vision for the organization, and use that to in guiding the development plan. Let me go back to leadership. Part of also leadership that I should also mention is training. That we have to, like I said before with our development committee, they don't have a lot of experience in fundraising. So part of our focus on leadership is training up those who are leading our fundraising efforts in best practices in fundraising. And that's going to be our responsibility, is to help train our development committee in best fundraising practices in the most recent data, so that they can be better partners as we raise money for our organization. The third thing that we need to talk about, or that should be talked about in the plan with our development committee, is the message. So another question for the audience here. Our first question was about whether or not you have a articulated purpose statement for your committee. Now I want to know, do any of you have a good one-liner for your organization? So when your development committee members are out in the community and they're trying to raise money for the organization, do they have a succinct and clear one-liner that they can deliver about the mission of the organization? Sometimes it is the mission, sometimes it's a tagline, but do you have a good, clear, concise one-liner that your development committee members can communicate out in the community? So type, okay, I see someone, okay, yes, currently working on it. Yes, oh, that's fantastic. Okay, this is great. So I'm getting a lot of yeses in the chat, so that's very encouraging. So good, I'm glad to see that so many of you have a good one-liner, elevator speech, whatever you want to call it. So if you have it, put it in your development plan. I'll give you an example. I was working with an organization that was wanting to move away from talking about their physical location from buildings, and they have a park, and they wanted to start using the term campus. So part of our development plan has a section on messaging, and we highlight key messages that we want to deliver throughout the year. And so that was one of them, is that we wrote a statement that really emphasized the campus component of it and guided people away from using terms like building and park and things like that. So it's great that you all have a clear one-liner mission statement message. Put it in your development plan so that your development committee members communicate that message, and they communicate it consistently. One of the main reasons why messages don't gain traction out with our donor base, out in the community, is because there are so many versions of it that are being articulated out in the community that it's not concise, it's not clear, it's not consistent. So put it in your development plan so that everyone on the development committee knows the message and they're able to communicate it consistently. And that kind of ties into having a good internal case statement, which is a topic for a whole other session, but you need to have a case statement for your organization. You also want your committee to help you build relationships. So that needs to be a part of your development plan that you share with your committee, how you plan on building those relationships, keeping in mind what their comfort level is. And I always like to talk about operations. What I'll say about that real quick is your development committee needs to know something about what's happening behind the scenes. Most development committee members have no idea what it takes to run a development office, or to do the strategy and the data, the research, the continuing education of being an effective fundraiser. So I always like to put something in my development plan that helps teach the development committee some of the strategy side of fundraising that they don't necessarily see. And it usually gives me a good training opportunity for the development committee. So one thing that I like to share is an operational component of the development plan. But those are the 5 key areas that I like to show with my development committee that we like to talk about. And let me see, how are we doing on time here? Okay. So the last thing that I want to cover is effective committee meetings. So this is the sort of the framework. Again, it's a simple framework, but it's highly effective. And not only will it get more done with your development committee meetings, but it's actually a committee meeting that people will look forward to and enjoy being a part of. So these are the 4 things that I will always have going into a development committee meeting. The first is a report on key metrics from the development plan. Okay, we're not going to report on everything, and we're not going to report for 30 minutes. What we're going to do is we're going to give our development committee a high-level report so that they understand, so that they're reminded what the goal is and the progress that we've made so far. And all that has to be is a high level. Here's what our goal is for the year. Here's how much money we've raised. Here are how many donors we have. And here's our retention rate. Now, there may be other things that you want to measure, but the goal is to give them a snapshot of the goal and a few key metrics that you're measuring so that they can understand, okay, here's the progress that we've made. We're on track or we're falling behind, and we need to talk about how we can catch up. That's the first thing. Not a lengthy report, just a snapshot of key data. And spend 10 minutes to go over it. Don't just hand it to them and read through it, but help take them through each piece of data and talk about what it means. The second thing that is in every development committee meeting is a training opportunity. Again, development committee members typically do not come in with good fundraising experience. They either have none or they have bad experience. So part of our committee meetings is a great opportunity to train them in best practices and recent data. So here are a few good resources that you can use today to train your development committee. One, the Giving USA report came out last week or 2 weeks ago, but the Giving USA just recently came out. $499.33 billion raised in 2022, and it's a 10.5, I think, decrease compared to 2021 in inflation adjusted dollars. And there's a lot of sort of subsetting data that goes into that. But use the Giving USA report to help your development committee understand the environment that fundraising is in right now, some of the opportunities and also some of the challenges, and how that data should inform or influence your plans and your strategies. Okay. I see a typo in here. So the screen says FEB. I'll correct that after the report. But what I meant to type was the FEP. There's the Fundraising Effectiveness Project that's put out by AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals. They issue a quarterly report that has a number of key metrics on it, but one of the key metrics is they measure donor retention. They measure overall donor retention, and they have subsets of donor retention. Retention based on giving levels, and retention based on new donors, newly retained donors, major donors, and so on. So pay attention to the quarterly reports from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, and each time they come out with a new report, use that as an opportunity to train some of your development committee members. causevox, you're here. Use this session, take out some nuggets from some of the sessions here, and talk to your development committee about what you learned and how you can start to implement some of these things. I know that the third session, Julie, is actually going to talk about how to retain new donors. First-time donors, how you level. That is a great, so you can use some data from the Fundraising Effectiveness Report and what you learned from Julie, take it back and share that with your development committee so that they understand some of the data and some key takeaways that they can start to discuss. Planned giving is also another, it's a go-to. It's a good area that you can always find something that you can learn yourself, and that chances are your development committee members don't know a whole lot about. Maybe they don't know anything about it. So there's always, go into your planned giving toolbox, pull out something like a donor advised fund. What are they? How are they used? You could talk about various trusts, bequests. There's a lot of different components in planned giving that you can pull out and use as a training opportunity for your development committee. So the framework for a committee meeting, report, training, and then I always like to have one big thing. We feel like we have to pack so much into our development committee meetings, in all meetings. I mean, some of the agendas that we've all seen have a list a mile long, and the meeting is an hour. that doesn't work. So I always like to go into the meeting. If I know that we're going to do some reporting, I know that we're going to do some training, I like to have one big thing. And the one big thing is the most important thing that we need to discuss and decide. Do we need to talk about a shift in the strategy? So if a report says that we're, ahead of schedule on in some of our metrics, how does that affect the special event that we have coming up? Or maybe we're falling behind in the number of donors. One of our goals is to increase the number of donors to our organization. Maybe we're falling behind in that area. We have a fundraising event coming up. How can we use that fundraising event to capture more donors at the event? So it could be a strategy shift. You could be doing some relationship mapping. You could be working with your development committee to identify donors within your organization that they might know, or they may have a relationship with someone that they think would be a good fit for a committee member, maybe a donor, and you need to talk out, okay, what is your relationship like with that individual? What might be the best way to make that introduction, and use that as an opportunity for other committee members to see how that process works. But relationship mapping, and it could just be some action. Maybe the one big thing that you need to accomplish in your meeting is making some calls. You may have a list of donors that have just recently given that haven't received a thank you call from a board member, from a development committee member. And so you block out a time of your committee meeting to have a script and for people to go make phone calls, thank you calls to those donors. So it even could be action oriented. But there's one big thing. If we can report, if we can train, and we can accomplish one big thing, those things make for an effective development committee meeting. Now, I always like to have a backup plan. If we report, we train, and if the one big thing doesn't take as much time as we thought, I like to have something in my back pocket, a backup plan that I can put on the table and say, well, let's discuss this. In the time we have left, here's something that we can start to talk about. That's one option. Another option that people don't really do is that you can, believe it or not, end meetings early. If you get through everything and you've got 10 minutes left in the meeting, you don't have to fill it. If you've checked all the boxes and you've made progress, you've had a great meeting, end it. If it's a virtual meeting, say, I'm happy to give 10 minutes of your time back. Thank you so much, and get out of there. If you're in person, say, thanks. I know you're busy. You've got stuff to do. You need travel time to get to where you're going next. Thank you. And adjourn the meeting. If they want to stay and talk, that's fine. But there is a lot of value in ending the meeting on time or a little early instead of filling the time with conversations and having it drag on. And now you've got a meeting that's well past an hour or whatever the scheduled time is. So have a backup plan. And if you need it, don't be afraid to end the meeting early if you're in a position to do so. So that's a really good, simple framework for a committee meeting. It's reports, it's training, it's having one big thing to accomplish, and having a backup plan. So, so let's recap what we've talked about here, and we have about 10, maybe 15 minutes for questions. So here are 3 things that you can do to start building a stronger, more engaged development committee. Thank you, Jenna. Please send your questions as I recap. Go ahead and start submitting your questions in the Q&A. 1, create a clear, high-level purpose statement and set clear expectations on both sides, the committee and yourself. Don't overcomplicate it. Make it simple and make your purpose statement high level. 2, lead the committee through the planning process. The key word there is lead them through the planning process. Take the lead. You're the fundraising professional. Don't wait on them to come up with a plan. Use that as an opportunity to build a plan, get their feedback, ask them some questions, get their advice, and help them understand why this plan that you created is built on best fundraising practices and why that is. And third, have effective meetings and use the framework, report, train, work, and then get out of there. So those are the key elements to having effective development committee meetings. Now, 10 to 15 minutes, we have some time for questions. And Jenna, if you will help me monitor that, here's what I'll do as we wait for questions to come in. I'm going to go back to this quote because I always like to keep this top of mind, and that's just how important it is to be simple in everything that we do, in the messages that we communicate, in the meetings, the meeting framework, the agenda needs to be simple. The expectations of our committee members need to be simple. Our plans need to be simple. And again, simple doesn't mean it's easy or insufficient, but simplicity is key to help our audience retain and have value in that. Okay, I see Julie has a question. Julie's question is, how do you respond to committee members who do not agree with your plan or part of your plan? That's a good question, Julie. It's very important that it's not your plan, right? It's as you're building the plan, you want to do that in partnership with the committee, so that one, they feel like that they have ownership in the plan. When we work with organizations on building a plan, it's not something that we do in a silo. We want to understand and ask key questions of our development committee members that creates buy-in to the plan, and so that they can see their answers and their feedback reflected in the plan. And so it creates buy-in so that when we actually present a plan to the development committee, it's not the first time we're talking about it, and it's not perceived as our plan. Because Julie, you're absolutely right. If we do it all ourselves and we take full ownership of the plan and we put that out there in front of the development committee and say, this is my plan and it's my way or the highway, that's not going to build a good partnership. That's actually not a partnership with the development committee. So one question that you should ask your development committee members, and I do this individually. I don't do this always out in a group setting. I will reach out to committee members one-on-one, and one of the questions I'll ask is, tell me about your experience giving to our organization. What do you like about that experience? Are there things that we could do better? Are there ways that we could provide a better experience for our donors? Those are questions that'll get your development committee members to open up. You can understand where they are. They might get some good information that you can take back and incorporate into the plan. You might ask them, what are you seeing other organizations do? Or tell me about an experience that you've had giving to another organization that stands out to you. What can we learn from what other organizations are doing based on your giving experience? So you can ask them questions like that to build that partnership, and you can take their responses and help influence the plan so that when you bring it back to them, they've had a voice at the table, so that it's not just our plan. That's a really good question, Julie.
That's great. Yeah, it looks like we have a couple questions from Tanya in the Q&A.
Okay, let's do, you stated that the committee members should give personally. What if a committee member cannot give financially, only their time? Do you foresee this as a problem? Yeah, so I recommend that the giving expectation for committee members is not a set dollar amount. What I ask committee members is that our organization is a top philanthropic priority of theirs. That's the heart, that's the spirit of what we want our committee members. We want them to lead by example. And if someone can give $10 and that is a meaningful, some people say sacrificial gift for them, then that in some cases is more beneficial than someone who can give a larger amount, but it's, they just write the check and they don't think about it. Their heart's not in it. So to put more context around that, I expect development committee members and board members to give a gift that's meaningful to them. It may be $5, it may be $10, it may be $10,000, but I want to make sure that they believe in the mission enough to have some skin in the game, to want to support the mission of the organization, and again, that they're leading by example. So I will say, Tanya, I've never had a development committee member that can't give something. So I would need to know a little more about why that would be an issue, and that's a private conversation that maybe you should have with that development committee member, because they may be a good committee member, but it's always more meaningful, and we know this as donors ourselves. Those of us in the fundraising space should be donors. When we give and when we support organizations, it provides an extra layer of skin in the game. We believe in it. We communicate different. We have buy-in. So I do think that it's very important for development committee members to give themselves.
And then, yeah, I think that this is also an interesting question, how to find committee members. Yeah, where do I look for them? Do I ask?
Yeah. Yeah, so how to find committee members. Your existing donor base is a really good place to start. Having a clear purpose statement and having clear expectations is a good first step, because you don't want to go out and start recruiting members when you don't have a good understanding of what you expect of them. So first, make sure that you know the purpose of the committee. Make sure that you have well-defined expectations for your committee members. Again, don't make it overcomplicated, but have that ready, and look at your donor base. That's a great way to start looking for committee members. Also, volunteers. If your organization has a good base of volunteers, those are people who usually already have a heart for your mission. They believe in what you do. They're already willing to support it. They're already doing so. And this may be an opportunity for them to help more people come alongside them in that journey than just giving. So continue to give and help us build relationships and love on donors who are already giving. That's the relationship building component. And you may have people in your network that don't know about our organization, or if our mission is focused on children, you may have someone in your network that is really passionate about serving children in this particular way, and they can help bring more people into the donor base. So so best way to find committee members, your donor base and volunteer base. Those are two groups to start with.
Amazing. Yes. Yeah, I liked the part that you focus on about, it's the heart of the individual, making sure that they really are passionate for your mission and vision. And yeah, so it sounds like the first step is, again, to have like those expectations set up for committee members, then maybe going to find them, recruit them. And then if it seems like some organizations on here didn't or are working through a creating a plan, what if it's their first time creating one? What would be like your, I don't know, your number one tip for getting started and creating a plan?
Yeah, that's always like how to create, committee aside, like how to build a development plan. You can spend hours, and that's one of those things that is really complicated. And it's why I've tried to simplify the process. The 5 areas that I covered in earlier in the session that I like to share with my development committee, that's a good place to start. We need a plan that has clear goals and identifies what we're going to measure. We need to make sure that we train our leadership to be effective fundraisers. We need to make sure that we have the right message that we're taking out into the community. Simple messages, not 3 pages worth of messages, but what are the messages we're taking out into the community? How are we going to build relationships with our donors? And what's 1 or 2 key operational components that we need to work on? That could be, we need a new database. It's time for us to move from Microsoft Excel and actually have a CRM or a donor database that can help us raise more money. You just may need to clean up your list. You may have a lot of old information in your list that needs a lot of cleaning up and organization. So those are the 5 things that I would start with in building a plan: goals and metrics, developing the leadership, training them up, having the right messages, how we're going to build relationships, and what operational components do we need to work on this year.
Mm-hmm. All right, sounds good. Thank you for sending those 5 key points for us, and they'll be included in the slides in case anybody missed them. We're going to send that over to you all. Yeah, was there any other last thought, Penny, that you wanted to share with everyone? This has been just a fantastic session with a lot of good practical tips. So thank you again.
Yeah, my last comment is just do one. We're at, again, the way I start, we're at the halfway point in the year. There's plenty of time to work with your development committee this year, build that relationship, and so that you build in some reps, you try 1 or 2 things in the second half of this year, and you can build on for 2024. So just start taking some 1 or 2 simple steps that will help build that relationship, because your development committee can be a huge fundraising asset. Like there's so much potential in your development committee. We've just overcomplicated it and made it into this thing that's really scary. So let's dial it back. Let's focus on a few simple things that we can do to build that relationship and take advantage of this really important group of people that want to help us succeed and raise money to help more people.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for just breaking that down and just, simple first and second and third steps. It makes it very easy, not overwhelming. And to everybody listening, I don't know if you guys want if you need any assistance with Kenny's consulting company, you can probably, I'm sure you would be happy, Kenny, if they would reach out, right? If they need some guidance along the way with their plans. Is that okay?
Yeah, if you go to 5 Tool Fundraising, we have a free newsletter that we send out 2 to 3 times a month, and it contains real practical tips. And the next one that we're going to send is going to be this kind of 1-pager that has some information about development committees in it. So yeah, if you need something, email me, reach out. If you want regular information with practical tips that you can actually use, sign up for the free newsletter. That'd be great.
Oh, awesome. I'll just drop this in the chat just in case you want to reach out to Kenny. Here's just the website. I don't have the direct link for the sign up or anything, but yeah.
Yeah, it's right there on the homepage.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, this has been so fun, Kenny. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us again today. Let me see if I have one more.
Yeah.
Yes, Molly says thank you. Thanks, Molly, for being here. Awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. Good to see you, Jenna. Thank you for having me, and I I hope the best for everyone as we start the second half of 23.
Yes, looking forward to it. All right, talk soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
All right. This has been awesome so far. Thank you for joining us for our first session. I am going to just share my screen real quick as I introduce our next guest. Maybe if I can do this properly. Okay, so yeah, just a quick recap. We are here with causevox on a supporter engagement workshop, and I just wanted to do a quick thank you again to all of our participants joining us, being super dedicated on a July Thursday in July. It's hot in New York City. I don't know where you guys are, if it's hot there, but thank you for being dedicated and really taking time to invest in your fundraising. We are going to pivot to focusing on volunteers in terms of turning your volunteers into super supporters. And we are joined by Gung Wang, the CEO and co-founder of Civic Champs. So I just want to welcome him. Hello, Gung. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's exciting to be on here. Thanks for having me, Jenna.
Yeah, I'm super pumped to have you here today and to hear about your work as you share with us your expertise. And so, yeah, I know people might be needing time to, like, I don't know, take a quick break, grab a drink, a cool drink, or just as we transition into this next session.
Yeah,
how's your summer going so far?
it's great. I'm actually calling in from Warsaw, Poland right now. So I'm overseas. So hopefully the audio is still good. And so, but yeah, excited to be here. It's what is it, 7 p.m. right now.
Oh, you're doing an evening call with us.
No, this is great.
Sure.
This is great.
Warsaw, Poland. Is this for business, for pleasure?
I wish we're not quite international that justifies traveling this far yet. Maybe one day, but no, my wife has the conference, so I'm tagging along to be for a little bit of vacation time here.
Wow, that's awesome. Good for you. Is this your first time in that part of?
It
Well,
is, yeah. We I've never been, and so it's neat. It's got a lot of history that I never knew about. So they had like the first constitution in Europe, and I was like, oh, things you never learned in school, I guess.
Yeah. I wish I learned more about all the different countries. Yeah. Well, enjoy your time there. Yeah, and for everyone joining, I'll just share a little bit about Gung's history. So he's the CEO of Civic Champs. So he leads a team of passionate change leaders to create technology solutions to create a seamless and rewarding volunteer experience for both the volunteers and service organizations. So again, we are going to be focusing on volunteers and donors in general. And I just want to welcome everybody who's just joining us for this second session. Just in case anybody's wondering, we will be sending out the slides and the recording of today's webinars. So no need to worry about missing any details. We'll be sending that your way. So I'm going to stop sharing and invite him to do that for his slides. So yeah, if you have any questions during this session, you can feel free to chat them into or I guess I should say the Q&A, right? Is that the best place for them to send their questions?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay,
yeah, and then I know we have a couple minutes, so if folks want to put in chat, sort of name, organization, and maybe any ideas or tips on how you might be deepening your engagement with supporters. Love to see that. I'm always here to learn in addition to share what we've seen thus far. So hopefully the next iteration of this webinar could be even better.
Yes, that's awesome. Thank you for being open to learning yourself. All right, I'm gonna let you take it away then, and enjoy, everyone.
Yeah. Can you all see my screen? I think you can see, right? So.
Yes, I can see everything, and everything sounds great.
Excellent. All right. Yeah. So again, my name is Gung. If you're just joining us, please put some stuff in chat and appreciate it. And so today's topic is turning your volunteers into super supporters and sort of best practices that we've seen in terms of engaging both your donors and volunteers. And so, quick background on myself, as Jenna said earlier, I'm the CEO and co-founder here at Civic Champs. I've had 2 other startups, so have really been involved in technology for a long time, but this is my first time in nonprofit tech. And so it's, we launched in 2019, but I would say this is probably the most fun of the 3 companies I've had to work on, and, excited to, support the nonprofit sector, right? And so in terms of why you might want to, why me and sort of our company background. So Civic Champs, we're a volunteer management software company, and we serve nonprofits across the country. And so I've had the fortunate pleasure of learning from lots and lots of nonprofit leaders across across the country, and seeing how they manage, engage, and retain their volunteers. And so we've sort of collected some of those best practices and things that we thought were really interesting, and wanted to share that with you. And so for today, we have basically 4 topics, and then wanted to get into some freebies we wanted to share with you all. And so one is, we've been collecting some data and some insights around sort of the state of volunteering. I think this is a good way to start, because it allows us to level set and say, hey, here, what's going on? Where are we today? From there, I'll share a couple sort of more interesting engagement strategies that we've seen some organizations adopt and use. And then talk about, what are the benefits of sort of activating your volunteers as donors, or vice versa, and how you can deepen that engagement across the board, and then how you might get started, right? And last but not least, if you stay, we'll share a couple freebies and tools with you as well. And so the state of volunteering, and so this is from Volunteer Pro. They did a study. I think they had survey of about 1,500 volunteer leaders. And one of the big insights was that in terms of the challenge that people are talking about when it comes to volunteer management, recruiting has sort of risen back to the top, which is not surprising given that with COVID, so much of volunteering really ground to a standstill. And so now people are sort of trying to restart their programs and getting those volunteers back, right? And so when you look at the last 4 years, one of the things that you'll see is that, while we had that big dip, the average in terms of numbers of volunteers that organizations have now have more or less gone back to pre-COVID levels, right? And so if you look at, pre-COVID here, this bar chart at the top, and then you look at the fall 2022, right? The colors and sort of the size of the bars are actually pretty similar, right? And has rebounded quite nicely. But one of the things that we keep hearing again and again is that folks still feel like they're lacking volunteers, right? They feel like they're lower than they used to be, right? And so how can both of those things be true? And so the main culprit, I would say, is really the number of hours or the intensity of volunteering that you see happening, right? And so basically you have, between pre-COVID to now, the mean here, you could see the number of hours a volunteer contributed over the course of the year on average was 30 hours. And now it's, between, sort of in this 10 to 20 hour range still, sort of towards the high side. But visually, right, it's full, right? The gap is, sort of shown here on the graph. You can see that is actually quite a lot, right? So that's, you go from 20 hours to 30 hours. And that's why people are feeling that, they still need more volunteers. And I think that's really explained by the fact that oftentimes what we've seen is your most dedicated volunteers, older volunteers most often, haven't always come back, right, back into the fold. And so they've been replaced by newer, younger volunteers, right? But those volunteers just aren't able to come back on a sort of a daily basis or a weekly basis in the same way that maybe your retirees are able to. And so you see this discrepancy still, right? And so as a quick summary, right? So the average number of active volunteers look like they returned to normal. COVID's obviously had a big impact, and the volunteer hours are lower than, the sort of hours per volunteer is lower, right? And within our own data, right, when we look at folks that actually use volunteer software, that proves out to be very consistent, right? So across all of Civic Champs and all organizations that we support, we see about 166 active volunteers per organization. So if you're thinking about, how do I stand relative to others in my in the industry, right? This might give you a sense of, am I above 166 or below, right? And then how much more, and you'll know, where you sort of stack up, if you will. Right. And then for most organizations, on average, we saw 4,000 hours volunteered per organization, right? And bring in sort of a collective impact of $117,000 or $118,000 based on the national average of the value of a volunteer hour. And these volunteers did 770 sort of acts of service, if you will, over the course of the year in 2022. And so on average, you see 5 activities per year per volunteer, 5 hours per shift is the average. And again, saying 24 hours per year, right? And so again, the old average used to be 30 hours, based on our data, we're seeing 24 hours per year, right? So that's, again, a sizable delta. Great. And so again, sector when it comes to volunteering, thought we would share some interesting engagement strategies that we've also seen, right? And some of this has been really led by COVID. And so they both start with micro, but what we saw is this, some folks increasingly using micro volunteering or micro donations to engage their constituents. And there's a lot of benefits to this. So what is micro volunteering? So these are short, specialized activities that you can usually do in 1 hour or less, right? And $5 after a specific event, right? Something you're not making big ass, right? And so here's some examples that you can think about. So in terms of micro volunteering, right? So you can be sorting donations or materials, picking up or dropping off items. And so again, during COVID, we saw a lot more of this with people helping with grocery pickups or going to the pantry and picking up food and delivering it to people, right? It could be ways to engage maybe some skill volunteers in terms of getting feedback on marketing materials, translations, right? Designing a logo, right? Things that take a little bit less time, often are asynchronous, right? You don't have to be exactly at the same time. And the big benefit here is that it allows a sort of easier on-ramp for certain folks that say, oh yeah, I'd like to be a volunteer. I want to sort of contribute to the cause or the mission, but I don't want to commit right now for a longer period of time. And this
Hey, Gung.
uh,
Gung.
Chloe,
Yeah, your connection keeps going in and out.
hello, can you all hear me?
I can hear
Oh,
you,
okay.
but your video
sorry
is
about that.
frozen. Yeah.
Yeah. Can
Maybe
you all
turn
still
off.
hear me now?
I can hear you.
Great.
Yeah, I can hear you. It's just, it seems it cuts in and out a little bit.
Yeah, let me see if I could turn off the video. See if that helps a little bit. Is that better?
Yeah, we can give it a
Yes.
test.
All right. Well, just let me know if the audio goes off again a little bit.
Will do.
Okay, all right. Oh, I see, yeah, in the comments there. Thanks, folks. So I guess, I won't sort of reiterate this too much, right? But just, these are a list of different types of activities, either because they're more flexible or because they take, less time to do, that are examples of micro volunteering, right? Does that all, hopefully that makes sense? I was going to ask, does that make sense? But, as a webinar, folks can't really talk back, right? So, and then, so what are the benefits of activating these volunteers, right? And so here's a couple reasons why you might think about activating your volunteers as donors, for example, right? And so before going into sort of micro donations, which oftentimes for us, we tie it to volunteering, right? And so the first point is that volunteers and donors really aren't distinct groups, right? Me as an individual, I don't think of myself as like Gung the volunteer or Gung the donor, right? But me as a whole person. And so treating folks as such is sort of counter to how they think about themselves, right? Obviously, it provides a new donation stream for folks, right? And organizations and fundraising, I know, has been tougher recently. And then I think the other main thing, though, is that it actually deepens the engagement of the volunteer, right? And it helps drive retention in many ways. We'll go into some of the statistics, but donors are more likely to volunteer. Volunteers are more likely to donate, right? So it's a very positively reinforcing sort of relationship here. And I think the other thing that's a little bit unfortunate, which is true, is that we treat in the sector, tend to treat donors and volunteers differently. And just by the fact that if we're activating some of these volunteers even as micro donors, we're going to treat them differently, and they're going to receive different materials. They're going to receive different sort of attention from the organization. And I think that actually also is the reason why that engagement deepens. Right. And so some of the stats around this, right? So volunteers are twice as likely to give than non-volunteers, right? And they give 10 times more in terms of donations over the course of their giving. In addition, this is from Fidelity Charitable. When you look at donors on the donor side, right, 79% of donors are active over the, sort of across the last, course of a year, right? And then on the right side of the graph, which is basically showing that 83% of these donors actually volunteer at multiple organizations, right? And when you look at the folks that are volunteers and donors, when you ask them, hey, do you volunteer at all the organizations that you support financially, or is there like significant overlap or no overlap, right? You'll see that 87% say there is some amount of overlap, right, in terms of who they tend to support financially and where they volunteer. And the really interesting part is this 44%, right, which is that there's some overlap, which for organizations, right, if you think about this, what this is telling me, at least, is that these donors volunteer at more places, perhaps, than they will donate to, right? Or they'll donate to, and so you want to make sure that your organization is part of the, cohort where they're, both volunteering and donating, right? And the number one reason that when you ask volunteers why they didn't donate, right? The reason they give is that they were never asked, right? And so you just want to make sure that you're able to make that ask in a sort of respectful way that acknowledge time, but encourages them to sort of be activated.
Hey, Gung, the audio cut out again.
Again, 50% of volunteers says that. Doing a lot better. I'm so sorry, everyone. How is it now?
You're back.
Okay, I'm back. All right. Well, hopefully, at least the my screen headers are giving the headlines here for folks who are listening in. And so, yeah, so, we were just saying that, volunteers are twice as likely to donate and then donate 10 times more. In this case, when you ask volunteers themselves, just based on their own internal observations, they feel like they also give more to organizations when they're volunteering, right? And so in summary, volunteers are twice as likely to donate than non-volunteers, and data shows that they're 10 times, they give 10 times more over the lifetime of their giving. 80% of donors are already volunteering and across multiple organizations. And so again, the real question is, volunteers are not opposed to donating. And so how do you ensure that they're donating to your organization, right? And so how do we get started in terms of activating these volunteers, right? And so, these are sort of 5 keys to success, or 5 ways to get started, if you want to think about it that way. And so the first is recruiting the right volunteers, right? And so I think this is actually key, which is identifying, who is your ideal volunteer profile, articulating to these volunteers, how they're moving the mission of the organization forward, and use some math, right? Which is my way of saying, try to use metrics as well to make that point, and not just qualitatively. Second is obviously, in order for you to activate and to sort of deepen your relationship, you have to provide a great volunteer experience, right? So streamlining your operations with recruiting and onboarding, being responsive, providing clear directions, and making sure that you get your volunteers engaged quickly. The third point, I think, is something that a lot of organizations miss out on, which is actually collecting feedback and getting an understanding whether volunteers are actually having a good experience or not, right? Otherwise, how do you know when it's time to intervene potentially, or how do you know if someone has a great experience and you actually want to lean in on them to recruit more volunteers, right? Going back to that recruiting question. Showing genuine appreciation and personalizing your ask, right? That's sort of almost in some ways a no duh, but very important. And the key here, right, I think, is again tying volunteers, in terms of their impact back to the mission of the organization, and sharing how they could expand that impact, right? And last but not least, tracking your volunteer hours and data, making sure you actually have the information you need to acknowledge and thank your volunteers at the end of the year. And ideally combine that with your donor information, right? So having some sort of integration, with your donor CRM, so that you have that, again, that holistic picture of your constituent. And so one of the things when it comes to recruiting the right volunteers, right? And that was highlighted in the sort of promo for this webinar, is this kind of novel concept that is, we call language market fit. And I think this is something that's pretty novel and unique, and we haven't seen, we see it used in the for-profit space quite a bit, but not as much in the nonprofit space, right? And so language market fit basically is just around this idea that your volunteers or potential volunteers, they think about your organization in a particular way. They want to be talked to in a particular way. They want to be sort of engaged, and sort of the language that they use can be very specific, right? In terms of what would be most motivating to them versus things that maybe are a little bit generic and doesn't quite get folks excited, right? And so how do you understand, with your ideal, volunteer constituency, what language is it that would help you with recruiting these volunteers, right? Since that's the number one pain point. And so there's sort of 4 steps here, right? And so the first step here is, just uncovering, their goals, struggles, and the language they use. And so the example here, basically what you would do is, go find a relatively new volunteer who's, just recently volunteered with you, and then just ask them to walk through the process of how they found you, right? Why they decided to volunteer and show up for the day. And then try to ask them to clarify what they were looking to accomplish, right? So like, why was it that they wanted to volunteer with you, or and why that day, right? Did they look for help in any way, right? In terms of, finding you, maybe it was a referral, maybe a friend told them about you. Did they think about other ways to accomplish the goal of what they were trying to do? Maybe they're new in town and they're looking to, build roots in the community, right? So what else do you do to build roots in the community? And try to interrupt them if there's more vague terms that are being used, right? If they talk about, well, I want to do something that's impactful, right? Like, well, what does impactful mean to you as an individual, right? And so what you're looking for is the very specific language that your volunteers are using themselves, right? So that you can do a better job of communicating to them. The second thing then that you want to do is then just draft some headlines, right? So like 1 or 2 liners that describe your recruiting pitch, right? So one way to formulate this would be, pretend that you're a volunteer and you say, I want to blank. And now as a volunteer with, Habitat for Humanity or whatever organization you're with, I can do X, right? And use the words that you've uncovered from your previous conversations with these volunteers, right? And so draft up a few of these, right? And then what you'll do is just validate comprehension, right? So all that means is take those headlines or sort of one-liners that you came up with and go find a 5-year-old, right? Or really anyone that's maybe a little bit less familiar with your organization and say, hey, here's where I'm trying to recruit some volunteers. Here's some ways that we came up with as sort of compelling reasons to come in, and try them out, right? And see, are they compelling? But more important perhaps is, do you remember what I said, right? Just ask them to sort of play back to you what was sort of the idea. And then ask them to themselves explain what is the mission of the organization and why they should volunteer, right? And see if that jives with what you were trying to communicate, and then iterate on that a few times. And I think you'll get to a much better messaging, right? And then the last thing, if you want to use a little bit more technology, is nonprofits get free Google ad spend, right? And so an easy way to test this is just create a couple ads, put them on Google Ads, right? And see which of your taglines or headlines actually gets more clicks, right? And views and folks coming to your website, right? And that's probably the one that's more compelling than the others, right? So hopefully that's helpful in terms of getting started in terms of step 1 on recruiting more volunteers, right? Recruiting the right volunteers. The second piece we talked about here is providing a great volunteer experience, and so and collecting feedback. And so for me, the easiest way for me to showcase this is probably just what we would do, right? And so obviously folks can use something that's not Civic Champs, right? But volunteer management software I think can be quite helpful. And so I'll just give you this as more of an example of how this might come to be, right? And so what you're looking on screen here is, we're, Civic Champs has a mobile app, right? And so trying to make things smooth and seamless for folks is one of the things that we hear that can be frustrating for volunteers, right? So, maybe it's when I reach out to an organization, they don't get back to me for months, right? Maybe there's a lot of steps in that registration process, or, when I show up, right, I can't get to work right away. I'm, sort of milling around and waiting, right? And so what you're seeing on screen here is our check-in process, where basically it's a 2-button tap, right? And so when you show up to a place here, it'll say, hey, are you here to volunteer at XYZ nonprofit? You say, yep, I am. And then it sort of checks you in, right? So it'll, allow you to tap check-in, and then later, select what opportunity you wanted to do, right? So there it is, tap check-in, select the opportunity, and then it, starts a little counter for your process, right? And then we talked about earlier micro volunteering, and so I saved that to now. So basically, at the end, when you check out for the day, Civic Champs, for example, allows you to make an ask of your volunteers of, hey, would you like to forward your, increase the impact that you're having, right? Thank you so much, by matching $1 for each hour that you volunteer today, right? In this example, you're also saying that you can be smart about this, right? And so we collect feedback from volunteers, right? So with the little smiley faces, and so you only ask people that are happy and engaged with your organization, right? It would be kind of dumb to ask for a small dollar donation from someone who had a bad experience, right? And so this is another reason why collecting feedback is so important, right? And again, collecting feedback can also allow you to identify the people that are really happy, not just for donations, but really you can even leverage them for recruiting, right? And if you have all of this data, right, it allows you to, quickly glance through on the back end, see who's happy, who's not, maybe see some reflections, and intervene with folks that have maybe a less than ideal experience, right? So this is a way for you to understand, how can I be creating a better volunteering experience and environment. The next step is showing gratitude and personalizing your ask. And so here we thought we would just share some examples. And so this isn't Civic Champs, right? So you could use anything. But here's just a, instead of sort of the micro donations we showed earlier, right? One way to sort of structure maybe an email follow-up ask would be something like this, right? Where you first thank people for their time and highlight their personal contributions, right? I think that's really important as, there's very specific contributions and how they're moving the sort of mission of the organization forward. Then tell them, what still needs to be done, right? And so you say, hey, this example is about an organization that that supports research around lupus, right? And so you say, hey, there's still a lot of work to be done here. And then explain why both donating and volunteering is helpful, right? And so what you want to do is avoid sending the message that they should choose between one or the other, but why, doing both is really impactful. Right. And so again, we have these slides that will be sent afterwards. And so, hopefully this can be a good template for folks. Right. Since we're in tech, I also love other technology platforms that help you. And so these are some of my favorite tools that I like when saying thank you. There's ThankView, which is a sort of a video-oriented platform, and basically you record a quick personalized video. It takes like 30 seconds and it sends it to your supporters. It can be really impactful, right? Like I can't imagine, I don't remember the last time I got something that was a video message from somebody, right? Thanks is basically gift cards, small little gift cards. Maybe like they have some, they come with like cute little headlines, right? Like thanks a latte, right? And so it's like a $5 gift card to Starbucks. So maybe that's another way for maybe someone that did something extra special and you want to give them something, a little a token appreciation, if you will. And then Kudo board is one of my favorite, which is really meant for folks who might have done something either over a longer period of time and knows more of the team, or maybe someone that's really made a big contribution in some way, right? And so Kudo board is a group thank you platform, and you can imagine, where when you used to pass around the paper, thank you card or birthday card right around the office, everyone signs it. So this is the digital version of that, but that makes it more interesting because now you can put videos and photos, and everyone can sort of contribute. And when you as of someone that's received one, it's really impactful, right? Because you say, oh wow, this organization or these people really care about me, and it's very touching, right? And then Loom and Vidyard are kind of like thank you. They're not quite as sort of purpose built, but basically they allow you to create record short little videos that you can then send to your supporters, right? And so that's another way I think is sort of unique and powerful in terms of showing appreciation. And then last but not least, you want to track your volunteer hours and data and ideally have that integrated. So for us, we have a number of integrations with folks like Razor's Edge, NXT, Little Green Light, which just came out today. Super excited for that. Salsa Labs, and then Salesforce through Omatic. So these are some of our partners that we work with. Obviously, these folks oftentimes have some of the some other partners as well, right? That integrate with them too. And so certainly Civic Champs isn't the only option, right? But I'll just give you guys a look at maybe what these integration could look like. And so this is our Razor's Edge NXT integration. And so you can see all the data from Civic Champs kind of flows in directly into your donor CRM. This is our constituent view right there. You can see the last time within Razor's Edge, sort of when someone has volunteered, their total hours, right? What roles they like to do. And so as a development director, or maybe someone on the team, right, this can be really powerful so that you have that holistic picture of what's been going on with that constituent. Yeah, and then you can also, deep links back into our profile. You have a tab on events that can show you their sentiment in terms of everything that they've done over the past, volunteering history that they've had. And then one of the other things that we have is, with any integrations, we have sort of real-time syncs, right? So you can sync your phone number, home address, things like that, that might be updated on Civic Champs directly into your donor CRM, right? So that's also a time saver, and I think a way to also ensure that, when you're emailing folks or calling them, you have the latest and greatest information, right? And then last but not least, like I said earlier, and promised, we do have a number of freebies that we wanted to share, right? And so the first is we have a series of blogs and articles that we've written around different topics that are related, right? And so you can see links to them right here. So Ultimate Guide to Recruiting, turning nonprofit volunteers into first-time donors, how to engage volunteers and donors of every generation, and best practices on how to make volunteers feel appreciated, right? And so these are hopefully helpful for folks. Take a look at them. In addition, we have upcoming webinars, right? So these are some of the things that we have coming up on July 20th and 27th. So the 27th is actually around that topic of how to recruit and retain Gen Z volunteers for your nonprofit. And so we have, I think, someone on our team that, from that's Gen Z, of course, but also we have a volunteer manager who's also, belongs in Gen Z, and so getting her perspective. And then we have a program manager who is, who's sort of, working in this space as well, right? And so hopefully that's helpful. We also have, of course, if you are interested in Civic Champs, we are offering a 25% discount for folks that are joining the causevox webinar today. And so if you're interested, this expires in a month, but there's a link to book time for a demo to receive that discount. And then last but not least, right, for folks that may want to stay in touch, right, here's my email and contact information. As I mentioned earlier to Jenna, right, I'm super excited to just chat with folks that want to talk about volunteering. It's sort of my it's my passion these days, of course, right? And so yeah, I welcome anyone to reach out and happy to chat. Doesn't have to be about Civic Champs necessarily. I know some folks have reached out and said, hey, I'm thinking about tracking this metric or that metric, and what have you seen from other organizations, right? Happy to have that conversation. So hopefully my audio didn't cut out much more. Again, I apologize. The overseas connection may not be as strong as I had hoped.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Kang. This has been great. Really appreciated all the tips for getting started with recruiting and converting, or not really converting, but also asking for that additional donation from volunteers. I really liked the email template that you shared. Yeah, and thanks, Chloe, also. For everyone who's still on the webinar, I would invite you to ask any questions you would have for Gang since he's with us here. You have him at your, available to you right now. So definitely take advantage of him being with us. Yeah, I'm trying to think, what would be the first step for somebody trying to, I don't know, I guess trying to recruit more volunteers. I think you mentioned maybe starting with the market fit language, seeing existing volunteers, what they think of their time.
Yeah, I think the first step actually for me is identifying who is your ideal volunteer profile. And so one of the things we see a lot is folks trying to recruit as many types of volunteers, right, as they can, and sort of, looking to target college students, looking to target retirees, and just a very broad approach. I would argue that oftentimes the best approach is to actually narrow your focus and just look at the folks that you've historically had the most success with and start there, right? And so it could be maybe you're really great with new retirees as an organization, and those are the volunteers that have contributed the most for you, right? And so what I would do then is just identify one or two of those folks that are volunteering with you, and just talk to them and say, hey, what is, maybe doing the language market fit piece, right? What motivates you? Why are you with, our organization? What is it about the mission, or what is it about the experience that really excites you? And again, when you have feedback from your volunteers, you might also be able to identify folks who have a great experience and ask them to be ambassadors, right? And help you with recruiting and say, hey, would you like to bring a friend next time? Or could you bring a friend? I guess not would you like to. And I forgot to mention this, but as it ties into causevox, I think this is another great opportunity, right? When you have folks that are engaged, supportive, excited, right? And you're looking at peer-to-peer campaigns as an example, right? These are the folks that perhaps you target for something like that, to say, hey, would you, so glad that you were here, so glad that you had a great experience. We're looking for sort of captains or leads, for this peer-to-peer campaign that we're going to run, and we think you would be a great fit, right?
I see. Yeah. So that makes it clearer to me. First, identify the ideal volunteer, and then move forward with the strategies you suggested. And yeah, I like that connection between different fundraising campaigns that an organization could be running to tap into the existing volunteers for leads for that. I think Molly has a question. How do you overcome staff resistance to volunteers? Never really thought of that. Have you experienced that, Gavin?
No, we personally don't experience as much as the technology platform, but I would say we hear about it, right? And so for me, it's going back to that articulation of why do you have volunteers to begin with as an organization. And so I think the really interesting and sort of ironic thing for a lot of organizations is that every nonprofit starts out as volunteer run, 100%, right? And at some way, as the organization grows and becomes more successful and has a bigger budget, we start to replace certain roles that used to be volunteer led with paid positions, right? Development often comes first, maybe program, and later on even the volunteer manager, right? And we never really get back to including volunteers again, typically in those functions, right? Or oftentimes they aren't. And so part of that, I think, is, understanding again across the organization, why do you have a volunteer program? What is it? What value do they provide? How are they moving the mission of this organization forward? And how can you then use that articulation to maybe help convince some of your colleagues that on sort of the benefits and the why, but also I think showing them the value in their department, right? And so I'm confident, right, that there are ways to involve, different volunteers to help with, whoever it is that's on staff with, some part of their job, right? And so when I was a consultant, we used to often, do these little initiatives that we call sort of, quick wins, right? And that was to get on the good side of our clients, right, that we were working with, to say, hey, look, we're here to help. And we've already, in the last week, made your life just a little bit better, right? Because, with this, maybe there's something they've always wanted, and we were able to make that happen for them, right? In this case, maybe this, this colleague might have, some tasks that they've been struggling with, or, doesn't have time for, and if a volunteer could help them, right, they might be a little bit more excited about the experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good insight. We have one in the Q&A from Luz. She says, hi Dung, great presentation. How was the transition from corporate tech to nonprofit tech like for you? And what would you say are the three challenges, were the three challenges for you? How did you overcome them?
Oh, yeah. A personal question. Nice. I would say the transition, as a founder, right, I sort of chose this as the field I wanted to be in, and I have absolutely no regrets, right? I think it was the right choice, and so for me, there's a couple things that I've loved. So one is, this sector is much nicer than other sectors. And so obviously, as a growing startup, oftentimes I'm reaching out to people, asking them to have conversations with me to say, hey, what do you think of this idea? How do you like Civic Champs, et cetera? And in other places, right, people might just hang up on you, right? And or like may even yell at you, right, or something. And so I would say in the nonprofit space, people are much more willing to help and sort of be engaged, and I've really loved that. The other thing is, having done 2 other tech startups, there are definitely moments when, it can be a little rough, right? And so maybe things aren't going as well. Maybe somebody quit, or maybe you had to fire somebody. Any number of hiccups along the road. And I thought, and I think it's been proven to myself now, that working in doing something that had a positive social impact could really help you get through those moments a little bit easier, right? Stay motivated. And I think that's been true.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, your personal experience with the nonprofit tech sector. Cool. Are there any other last minute questions out there? If not, Gung, do you have any final words for our audience?
No, I think the biggest thing I would encourage people to do is just to try something, right? And there's don't be discouraged, right? Let's say you're like, oh, I want to try this, sort of language market fit thing Gung is mentioning, but you get through step 1 and then you run out of time, and so, but that's okay, right? Don't be too hard on yourself if you've taken a couple steps, but had to take a pause, or maybe had to take a step back. Just acknowledge that. Be gracious and kind to yourselves, and just as long as you're taking that first step, right? It's it's all that matters really at the end of the day. And so I would just encourage people to keep that in mind, and not, with all these webinars, it's like, oh, there's so many great ideas, right? But there's no need to take all of it on all at once, right? And so just celebrate the fact that if you're doing any of it, right, that's awesome.
Yes, I definitely echo that. Thanks for that reminder to just take one idea that you want to implement and start somewhere. So definitely recommended. Thank you so much, Gun and Chloe, for your time today. And I again really appreciated the information you had to share with us. I think it's going to really help our audience improve the way they engage with volunteers. So
Thanks for having me again. Thanks, everyone.
yeah, enjoy the rest of your stay in Poland.
Will do.
Talk to you soon. And for all of us still on our webinar, we have one more session, and really excited to have Julie Edwards with us again. She has spoken on causevox a few times, and each time it's just a joy. She brings so much life and energy to her presentations, and I just love what she's going to have to share with us. And I'm going to just share my screen real quick, if I can find my, here we are. So now we're here, we're almost at 2 p.m. We have 10 minutes, I guess, to stand up, stretch, refill your, I don't know, what are we drinking right now for beverages, something, eating, snacks. What is your snack of choice today? Please chat us in. What is getting you through your Thursday workday? We will be joined by Julie Edwards in just a few moments. Right now, I just have water, and I had cereal with granola and a Nutri-Grain bar earlier. Lots of coffee, yes. Lots of coffee. I am not a coffee drinker, and I don't really know.
Tequila.
I don't know how to be a coffee drinker. Tequila. All right. Yes. Hey, whatever gets you through the day. I mean, so those of us still on again, so just kidding. No worries, no judgment. I am such a coffee drinker. What is your coffee of choice? Coffee brewing, right? Like there's a specific type of, like, people like to make their coffee in a certain way, I guess, right? Like, I don't know. I'm not a coffee person. I don't know how it works. Sugar? Do you have sugar, cream, all that stuff, or do you do it black? I don't know. It's just a little something for me.
Gotta be sweet and pale, just like me.
Sweet and pale, yes. Oh, black, nice. That's legit. Bustle is my espresso pot, no sugar or milk. Interesting. So the coffee drinkers like it black.
That's
All right.
hardcore. That's hardcore.
That is hardcore.
My ginormous Yeti that has my energy squirty drops in it.
Oh, Bustelo. Sorry. Sorry. Bustelo. I misread that.
I have an espresso, Janine, which has the little pods, you drop in. Because if you're going to drink coffee, you might as well just go all in and drink espresso. So.
Yes. Just a reminder, slides and recording will be sent. And we do have another webinar coming up. What day is it? I believe it's July 11th. We're going to be talking about mobile first peer-to-peer campaigns, why mobile first is important, and how to really optimize your peer-to-peer campaigns for being more mobile. So you can register there. Yeah, it would be another great time with everyone learning about digital fundraising. So I highly recommend you take a look at that. But yeah, I know we're coming up to Julie's session. So just a reminder, Julie's going to be talking about cultivating relationships with first-time donors, a really, really pivotal, critical, whatever synonyms you want to use for that, because donor retention is huge. Recurring and retained donors are much more likely to give and give again long-term. So yeah, Julie Edwards is a fundraising and nonprofit strategist at the Nonprofit Maven. So you may have heard from her in one of our previous webinars, but she entered the sector in 2010. And so she's been working in many capacities as a development director and also as an executive director. So she has helped to increase revenue for her previous organizations by 600% and saw 850,000 in capital expansion projects. And then she launched her consulting business in 2020. So she has been thriving with nonprofits and doing strategizing for them. So yeah, I want to just welcome Julie, and I will stop sharing and let her take it away.
Do we want to go ahead and start? Or do you want to wait a few extra minutes or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can wait a few extra minutes if you want.
1:55. I mean, it doesn't matter. I just know that I don't think anybody's necessarily. I'm coming in clutch at last, and everybody's probably like, "Oh, I'm asleep," and I'm ready to be over with this. But
yeah, no, yeah, I think if you want, you can start. I don't know if anybody else will be joining us, but if they do, they will
we'll
hear
just
it
touch
on
up.
recording.
Yeah.
They'll catch up. They'll catch up.
Is that on screen?
I do see your screen.
Great. And I'm going to start the slideshow. There we go. So just need to start, Jenna. Let me start.
Yeah, sure. You can go ahead.
So good afternoon, everyone. I know I'm coming in third here, so I just know this has been a long session, but full of great information so far, and just lots of good information about how you can match up with certain new donor groups and get them to give and cultivate them, and to enhance your fundraising program. And specifics are always great. So just a little bit about me too. I love donor relations. It's one of my wheelhouses. It's one of the hills I will die on. And so it's something that I'm really passionate about, which hopefully will come across in my presentation. But I am going to say that, if you don't have a donor relations plan, or you don't have the resources to have a donor relations plan as robustly as you would like at your organization, if you can focus on one group only, I would choose first-time donors. And we're going to talk about why they're the most important donor throughout this webinar. So a little bit today, again, why first-time donors are so important. We're going to talk about that, where to start when you're stewarding your first-time donors and best practices, your strategy around stewarding first-time donors. And then I have a bunch of ideas and samples, which is one of the things I love to include in my webinars, so folks can get some creative inspiration about things that they can do and take back to their organization. So why new donors? We need to remember, as nonprofits, we think everybody knows everything about our organization, but they don't. And so someone that's new to your organization is really excited. And when they make that decision to give, that is one of the times when they're going to be the most engaged with your organization. They are making an attempt to connect with your organization. And outside of the basic needs that we need as humans, like food, water, and shelter, connection is the number one thing that humans crave the most, to feel a part of something. So if you understand that, then that helps you when you're communicating with first-time donors, because there's a reason that they are giving to your organization. And it's probably because they're passionate about some part of your mission, and they want to connect with you. They want to give you money. And so you need to make sure that they know how grateful you are and the impact that they're going to make by choosing to be a donor to your organization. Again, that first gift, that is your make or break time. You don't get a second chance for someone to make a first-time donation. They're going to make a first-time donation one time. And I know for us, for fundraisers, it feels like when the person makes the donation, that's the end. They're sealing the deal, right? But for the donor, you have to remember that's the start of the relationship for them. And it's also, again, the most important time. And you just have that one chance to get it right. So it's really important to make them feel special and acknowledged. This is a little bit about what Jenna was talking about earlier. So I was the development director and the executive director of a local humane society where I live in Georgia. And when I started, they didn't really have a fundraising and marketing program. So I increased donations by 100% over 4 years. But then when I was executive director, I took a few years off to focus on operations, because there were some operational things that needed to be handled before I launched into more hardcore fundraising. But so I'd probably say between 2016 and 2020, so 4 years, we increased donations again by 300%. And the only thing we really did significantly different was the way we stewarded our donors. Because I remember specifically, I went to my first conference ever, and Tom Ahern, I don't know if y'all know him, he's a fundraising guru and one of my mentors. He talked about donor love for the first time, and it was like a light bulb moment for me. And it just made so much sense. And we came back from that conference and immediately changed the way we started doing things in the way we thanked donors. And it made a difference. I truly believe it made a difference. And I will, again, that's a hill I will die on, because I do think it was the one thing that really made us stand apart from other organizations. This sounds very simple, but sometimes it's not very simple. Why do donors ask? I mean, give because you ask. Why do they give again? Because you thank them. I always tell people that donors don't owe you anything. They don't have to give to you. And people are not just going to hand you their money without understanding what you do. And they're certainly not going to give you more money if you don't thank them and tell them how you're using their money. One of the things I always like to tell people is you cannot control how a donor gives to you. You can only give them the opportunity to give. So you need to make sure that you're giving them those opportunities and that you're thanking them appropriately. And the little autoresponder you get from, whatever platform you use is not enough. You've got to be able to thank them in a more robust way that is more meaningful to them. And again, especially the first-time donors. Now, this slide always hurts my little fundraiser heart, because I include it in all of my donor relations webinars, because I think it's important for people to know that study after study, the vast majority of donors do not feel appreciated by organizations that they donate to. And this is really sad. More than 60% of all nonprofits don't thank donors, like at all, some at all, or very impersonally, or just the autoresponder. And that really blew my mind when I heard that stat, because it's hard to believe that people will give five-figure gifts and not get thank yous for them. I personally know people that have given five-figure gifts and not received a thank you. So again, if you can do anything, a lot of times that makes you stand out from everyone else, because a lot of people out there are not doing nothing. So, but it's really important, and it does help you stand out. This is a graphic I always use. It's from Bloomerang. It's been around. It's like a classic graphic. It is a little older, but unfortunately, the stats are probably really still true. Average donor retention rate in this country has hovered around 40 to 45% for forever. So half the donors that you get, you're going to keep, right? First-time donors, only 20% of them will give a second gift. So that drops by more than half. But if you can get that first-time donor to give you a second gift, which is that repeat donor there, the likelihood they'll continue to give to you increases 3 times, up to 60%. That's huge. So, that again is the reason why you really need to focus on first-time donors and making sure they feel loved, because in bringing them into that fold, bringing them into your organization, making them feel appreciated so that they will continue to give. So you probably have heard, if you keep up on stats at all, that, over the past decade and certainly the past few years, donations have continued to increase, which is great, but the donor base is decreasing. And so there's less people, but they're giving more money, which I guess is a good thing. But, that trend could turn at any time. But the leading cause of donor decline is coming from new donors not re-upping. So people that give first time are not giving again for whatever reason, but at least if you thank them and hopefully engage with them, that'll up your likelihood that they'll give to you again. So I love this quote. It says, "Court your donors and provide them such an exceptional experience that they make a second gift." I made a case in one of my e-newsletters a few weeks ago that courting a donor is a lot like courting a new love interest. I mean, think about when you first meet someone and you start dating them, and you're excited, you want to get to know them, you want to get to know everything about them, you want to tell them all about you. And then you're also very intent on showing them that you're interested and that you appreciate their attention. That is the same way you treat a new donor. That you want to give that, that I'm interested in you. I want to know why you give. I'm appreciative that you give to our organization. So it is a little like courting. And again, prioritizing retention is incredibly important. A lot of nonprofits are out there focused on acquisition, 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 and acquisition is important. You have to, get new donors, but then you have to keep them when you get them. But you actually spend less time and less money keeping the donors you have than trying to get new donors. I think the stat is the cost of acquiring new donors can be 50 to 100% more than the dollars that they wind up giving. And that payoff can take years to see because you have to, again, keep them in the loop and keep them giving before you see that money. If you've ever done direct mail, acquisition direct mail, you know that is true because acquisition direct mails are incredibly costly and you do get new donors off of them, but to see that money returned, that investment return can take some time. So again, focusing on the donors you have is more important in a lot of ways than acquiring new donors. Where do you start? So I am a big proponent of planning. Again, if you know anything about me, you know that I'm really a big proponent of planning. And it's really important to determine how your strategies are going to be successful on the front end. One note here really quickly, if you don't have a CRM or constituent relationship management platform, what I call a donor database, I would highly recommend you acquiring one. Luckily, right now is a great time of year to do that because it's in summer and we're not ramping up hardcore to year end yet. It's sort of like a little break time for a lot of folks. It's a great time to do that. There are a million different platforms out there. When I started in nonprofit work, there was 2 platforms. And now I don't even know how many there are. And they do different things. There's free ones up to very costly ones. So I wouldn't make a recommendation, but I would definitely ask your peers, ask folks in your sector what they use, what they find is helpful to them, because it really depends on your organization. You have to sort of right size it to your organization and your needs of your organization. And again, there's so many out there these days that it's hard to say that one is better than the other for any particular organization. But running those reports on the front end and trying to figure out, how much your retention has been from first-time donors, the average gift, so that you can note that down the line if your strategy is helping a year out, 6 months out, to see if those people, you're retaining them more and they're giving more money and second gifts. So one of my favorite quotes is from Don Draper on Mad Men. If you watch that show, make it small but significant. So I don't want you to become overwhelmed as we start going through all these examples and the different strategies and say, we can't do that. We're a 1-person shop, we're a 2-person shop. I don't have that help. I get that. I was for a long time a 1-person shop, and then I slowly added staff as our budget grew. And by the time I left, it was me. I had 2 development people and 2 marketing people, and that was it. And donor and also some volunteer help. So I always encourage people to grow as your resources grow. Resources are time, money, and people. So, focus on what you can do and do really well and make it significant, but be consistent about it. And that's really the most important part, rather than doing a whole bunch of things that are expensive and not doing them well. Again, thanking appropriately. An autoresponder, again, not a thank you. And if you don't know what an autoresponder is, that's like when you make your donation through any platform and you get the little thank you for your gift, and it's basically like a receipt for their donation. The stats online are to send an email within 24 hours and a mail, a letter within 72 hours. That is very daunting. I get that, especially when, it was daunting to me, I know. But, think about ways that you can at least increase your ability to send those things out very quickly, because thanking them appropriately and getting out there quickly are very key. Have volunteers help, automate the emails if you can, if you have an email platform or you send emails through your donation software, make sure that has an ability to do that. So take that off your plate. In my opinion, 1 week is probably the max that you need to wait to send, to get stuff out there for a letter. Emails need to go within a few days. And then I'm going to talk about tasking later, but tasking is thanking and asking. So you don't want to thank someone and ask them for money at the same time. But when it comes to new donors, that can be a little different. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Thank you copy. So I am a big proponent, again, of being very warm, very vulnerable, very open. This doesn't always apply to every nonprofit. I was a director again of an animal shelter. So, that is there are some very serious things that happen. We saw very horrible things that happened to dogs and cats that came to us. And, if you're working in human rights and, sex trafficking, some kind of, it can be hard to be silly. I get that. But you can be warm, you can be genuine. Don't be afraid to evoke emotion. Emotion is how people connect, right? I mean, that again, people want that connection, and people can connect through emotion. And remember, don't talk about you and what you do as an organization. Talk about the donor and what they're making possible through their gift. That's incredibly important. And again, you really can't thank people enough, in my opinion. Thank them again and again and again. I mean, that is the most important thing, is, continue to thank them. It's just so important. And one of the things you may or may not have heard of is a lot of organizations use what they call a drip campaign. So this can be an email campaign. Usually you can also do it via mail, which I'm going to talk about. But usually a series of 3 emails, could be more. I wouldn't do more than 4 probably. And they have different meanings, and different times that they go out, excuse me. And I'm going to go through them step by step, but I'm going to say on the front end that these may need to be changed up in the topics of them, depending again on your organization. So don't take this for the gospel. It's just, suggestions. So do remember that. So the first email in the drip series is just your thank you, right? It's beyond the autoresponder. You want to thank very quickly and very authentically. Again, if you can get that out in 24 hours, that's best. Be sure to acknowledge that it was their first gift. Thank you so much for your first gift. We're so glad, that you chose us to give to out of all the other charities in the world, right? Focus on how important that donor is to your mission. Emphasize all the great things you can do because of them. If you can include some photos or a short video or a story of something that was made possible by donors, that's even better. So that's just something you really want to go all in on. Be super warm, super gushy, and just really thank them very authentically for making a gift, because they chose to give their money to you. They could have given it to any other organization, but they chose to give it to you. And that is huge. And again, it is the start of their relationship with you. And so you need to acknowledge that and honor that. Second email. So second email is, it can be 2 things. I'm going to discuss this later, but you can show donors what they can do. So you can go a little bit more in depth about the difference that they can make, about what their gifts will accomplish with your organization. For example, you could again include a brief video from your ED or from someone that you've served. You can talk about how, very specifically, like $10 provides a winter coat for someone that needs one, or $20 provides clean water for this village in Africa for a month. Whatever that is, you can give very specific examples. The second email could also be, and I'll tell you why, there could be another thing. It could be an engagement email. So it could be an email where you talk about how that donor can engage with your organization more. And those would be non-monetary engagement things. So your social media platforms, your blog post, your e-newsletter, being a volunteer, giving in kind. Here's our Amazon wish list. So sending that out and including links like, here's ways you can support us outside of money, and giving them those examples. And this is why, because the third email for some can be a monthly giving program, but you may not have a monthly giving program. And if you don't have a monthly giving program, then the second email could be your third email, if that makes sense. But if you do have a monthly giving program, then your third email should be about that, or can be about that. And you want to phrase it not implying in any way that their gift was not enough. See, hot tip down there, don't imply their original gift was not sufficient. What you want to do is say, again, this is a special club of our best supporters, and we wanted to make you aware of it and how important they are. And you can consider, a soft ask, and that's where the tasking, where you say, if you'd like to join, here's the link to do so. We'd love to have you be a part of our monthly giving club. And maybe it has a name, maybe it doesn't. And the reason why I say you can task in this third email is because there are tons of stats out there that donors will make their second gift. First-time donors, I forget the percentage, will make their second gift within 15 to 30 days of their first gift. So it's sort of striking while the iron is hot. You're out here nurturing them, and it is not bad to do a soft ask for a second gift. And that may be through introducing your monthly giving program and asking them to be a member of that. So other ways, so, again, if you need to change up those emails because maybe the content doesn't make sense for your organization, again, sharing how they can engage more. You can also add a phone call to the mix if you want to add a phone call in here. And again, this depends on your resources. You can add a mission moment video to the emails. You can also send a welcome packet, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. You can invite them for a tour. Of course, a tour is going to mean that you need a bricks and mortar facility for them to come tour. So that's not going to work for all organizations again. And phone calls. I just want to say a word about phone calls. Phone calls are highly underrated. People think, I think it's our society and cell phones and all of that, and voicemail and texting, that phone calls are not welcome. But there's data out there that shows that phoning a first-time donor after a gift can increase the likelihood of a second donation by 40%. That's huge. And 9 times out of 10, you're probably not even going to get them on the phone. You're just going to get their voicemail. But it is so unexpected these days to actually get a phone call from someone that when people get it, you really stand out as an organization. The other thing that I will say about phone calls is they cost nothing but your time. So if you have a very small budget and you don't have the money to print things or whatever, you don't have a CRM yet that sends emails automatically, you can do a phone call. You don't need any special equipment. You don't need any money, but you can make a phone call. And this is a great place as well to include your board. So if you're trying to get your board members engaged in stewardship and helping you out, I would say to be selective about the board members that you choose and make sure that they are ones who are well-spoken and feel comfortable doing that, and give them a script. But there's a great place to include board members and even other staff members. It doesn't have to be, and I'll actually say this stat too that I've seen, that volunteers rank higher among people who receive phone calls as being more authentic or influencing them more or whatever, because they don't get paid. So in other words, a board member calling a donor versus an ED or a DD calling a donor ranks higher in that donor's mind, because they know that the board member is not a staff member and this is not their job to do, that they're doing this on their own time as a volunteer. So I think that's an interesting stat. Just want to share that. Another thing you can throw at your board, if they say, why do we need to do this? You can say, oh, because it's going to be much more meaningful coming from a board member than it will be coming from us. Welcome packets. So a lot of organizations do use welcome packets. I will say, of course, that these are money. You're going to cost money because you've got printing and postage that's going to be involved. You certainly can probably do certain things to keep the cost down. Some copying on the inside, that kind of thing, choosing lower cost things that you include in the packet, but they do cost money. So I don't know if this is a great option for organizations that don't have a huge budget, but it is an option. And I just wanted to present it as something that you could think about doing. So again, I'm just listing some of the things that can be included in a welcome packet. This is, you can sort of pick and choose what you would like to include, but should definitely include a card or a letter from the ED or DD. Again, something very welcoming, very warm, hand signed or handwritten, an overview of what you do. That could be a recent newsletter, that could be an impact report, but something about what you do, and more than facts and figures, preferably some images so they can see, because pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? You can include timeline of upcoming events if you have a calendar. Again, recent print collateral, so recent newsletter or annual report. An inexpensive gift is always great, like a bookmark, a sticker, a window cling. These are great because they're reminders of folks. I will tell you later, one of the things that we used to include in our packets, I'll show you, but one of the things we used to send were photos, just printed photos of animals that people helped. And people would tell us they hung those on their refrigerators. We actually went into a corporate donor's business one day to hand deliver a gift to them. And this lady that is a couple, a husband and wife that own this business, she had all of our photos like hung up on her wall behind her desk, which I thought was so awesome. But people will keep those things. They remember them. Also, a short survey that can be done electronically or via paper if you're asking them to mail it back, to show your interest in their input. Why did you give to us? What is important, about our mission that made you give to us? It can really give you some great information about that donor and just your donors in general. And then again, inviting them to engage on social media. So these are just a few little sample plans to show you how you can do donor relations. None of these, again, are written in stone. You really, again, need to sit down and look at all the options you have to steward first-time donors and decide what works for your organization, again, based on your resources of time, money, and people. So maybe they get a phone call right away, right? And a postcard if no number. Then the email or mail series goes out. This would be probably one of the most robust strategies. Then they maybe get a bi-monthly touch point following that initial series of emails. And then they get a donorversary card at 1 year of their first gift. That would be a pretty robust plan. Or maybe it's just a call and a letter. So at my organization, one of the things that I did is I split that responsibility with my director of development. So, the higher level gifts, mail or online from first time donors, got a call from me and then a letter from me. And the lower level gifts got, and I hate to say lower level and higher level because they're all important, got a call from my director of development and a letter from her. And, so we split that because it can be too much depending on the number of first time donors you get for one person. And certainly if one of us got overwhelmed one way or another, like if we had an email campaign, I would step in and help her out if needed. But that was in general how we, handled it at our organization. Again, we did an email and a mail series. If we did not have their email, but we had their mailing address, if it came back from a direct mail, we would send them a 3-part mail series versus a 3-part email series. So if that donor came in via email, they got the 3-part email drip series. If that donor came in via mail, through direct mail, we sent them a letter, a very gushy letter, and then a large format postcard talking about how they can engage, and then another smaller format postcard talking about our monthly giving program. And then these are the basic timelines they went out in. So the first one went out in 24 hours. The second one went out in 3 to 4 days. And the third one went out in 8 to 10 days from their gift. And again, this is just what we did. You may not have these resources. I don't want to, anybody to be daunted by this, but just again, giving you an idea of what you can do. Action step. So this is the planning for the plan. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, y'all. I just did a sip of water. Sorry, this is the action plan rather than the strategy plan. And you may need to change this up from year to year. You don't have to keep the same thing all the time, but it is important that whenever you have a campaign, like your year-end campaign, that you talk about how you're going to address first-time donors. Are you going to do anything different than you normally do? Like maybe at the holidays, you want to send them a little gift. I don't know what that is. And maybe you don't. And then of course you have your overall annual plan for how you're going to steward them in general. And then again, you need a game plan for your CRM, making sure that when you record first-time donors, that you're recording those appropriately so you can pull that data later for your metric comparisons, and recording all the touch points. So in other words, if you have a board member that's making phone calls for you, you need to have them report back to you and say, I talked to Mrs. Smith and she said blah, 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 blah. And then you record that in your CRM. Or when you talk to someone or your DD, whoever's doing the talking, the communicating, even if if you're sending a letter, if you're sending an email, all that needs to be recorded on their record. And I will tell you why this is important, because when we were upping our stewardship game, we recorded every touch point for the first time donor in their record in our CRM. And it took about a year to get good traction. And because we started, I say, in late summer, early fall. And by the next holiday season, I saw the frequency of gifts increase and the amount of gifts given increase. And I could look back and see the timeline of how we had stewarded that donor and how their frequency of their gifts and the amount of their gifts had increased. And it's pretty evident. And so that's why it's really important to make sure you're tracking this so you can see that what you're doing is working again. Prepare. So again, before you're sending emails, test them out, make sure they work correctly, make sure they're deploying correctly, gather any photos, videos that you need. And then if you are sending swag and your bookmarks, stickers, whatever, postcards, make sure that you order those and that you keep the inventory. I remember one time, like we ran out of something in the middle of December and we couldn't get it, back in time for year end. And, just stay on top of those kind of things, because it is important to make sure you have everything you need to get whatever you're doing, be it a welcome packet or an email or whatever, out to the first time donors as quickly as possible. Schedule. So again, staying on top of this is incredibly key, making sure that your calendar, since these things are so close together, and making sure someone's responsible for it. And again, it doesn't have to always be the same person. There could be one person responsible for making sure phone calls are made, one person that's responsible for deploying the emails, one person that's responsible for sending letters. It doesn't have to be one person doing everything, unless you have a donor relations. Maybe you have a donor relations person, I don't know. You can get ahead of the game by doing some things like you can run your anniversary card list well ahead of time and get those prepared by volunteer, labeled and stuck and ready to go for July, right? So you can do things when you have time or with volunteers, so you're not rushing at the last minute to do stuff. This was a anniversary card that we used. And so it's little puppy and kitten getting married. And it says, we're celebrating the anniversary of the day you said I do. And we sent that out and people loved that. It was so cute. But again, we printed these, we would print out the labels for these, like, a couple of months ahead of time, have a volunteer come in and label them all and just stack them July ones, August ones, September ones. And then we just, drop them in the mail the first day of the month, right? So you can get ahead on this stuff again without having to worry about rushing at the last minute to get stuff labeled and ready and prepared. This is a sample welcome packet. So I wanted to walk through this, even though you may say welcome packets aren't for us, just to show you the kind of what it looks like if you've never seen one. I actually, again, took this from Bloomerang. They had a great blog post on when I was doing my research on welcome packets. And this one in particular is a Bloomerang employee who made a donation to an organization. And he was talking about how blown away he was by the response from them, their stewardship of him as a first-time donor. So he said, the communication steps were he automatically got an automated receipt. That was immediate. He got a personal email from the DD within 1 hour. And then he got the welcome packet within 3 days, which is pretty phenomenal. So, and again, don't be daunted by that. But this was the receipt. So it was the Great Rivers Environmental Law Center, which is important. I will say a word about this. Autoresponders usually give very little, if any, room to personalize them. You may be able to put 1 or 2 sentences on there about your organization, but usually it is, thank you so much, I'm out, and that's why you cannot use them as your thank you letter, because you usually have very little space, if any, to personalize that to a donor. So this is part 2 and 3 of the packet. So that was his automatic email, the number 2 there that he got from the DD. And it's very short. It just says, what a lovely surprise, to see you responded to our tweet, whatever, right? Very personal. 2 sentences, doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be elaborate. 3 was the handwritten note that he got from that same employee in his welcome packet when it was mailed. So you saw the first autoresponder. This is the personal email number 2, and 3 is the welcome packet, and that is one part. Again, this may sound bad, but you can write handwritten notes ahead of time. You can write write a stack of notes, write 20 of them, and all you need to do is go in and write the person's name on it. And that may seem like cheating, but it does help you get ahead of the game and not be so stressed out to have to sit down and write notes every day. Or if you all of a sudden get 10 gifts in, have to sit down and write those. But you can use the same note script, the same wording, and just go ahead and write those down, have them ready to roll, stick in the mail when a donation comes in. Make it easier on yourself as you can. This is the rest. So this is the whole welcome pack together. So in the welcome pack, he got a thank you letter with a handwritten signature from the ED that again mentioned he was a first-time donor. He got that handwritten thank you note from the DD that I just showed. You got a copy of their most recent newsletter, which is great because it sort of shows your preview future communications. It shows what the organization's been doing. He got a reply device and a business card. And so now we're going to talk about the reply device, which is the FASTing again. So again, I don't usually promote FASTing, thanking and asking at the same time. But again, because first-time donors usually make their second gift within 15 to 30 days after their first gift. A lot of them do. That they make a second gift, I should say, then this is not a bad time to do it as long as you were doing a soft ask. So they just included, I call this an offering envelope. If you've ever been to church, it's an envelope, but it's it just has I don't know if you can see it, but you can look at it. It has the different levels on there and a short thing about why you need to invest, and they can put their information, stick in a check, fold it over, send it out. I would say if you're doing this, if you're sending something like this, I would also include a QR code. COVID brought back QR codes with a vengeance, which is great. And I have used them with other organizations on their direct mail pieces, and they have gotten good traction from them. So a lot of people will just take their phone, take a shot of the QR code and go donate online. I would say if you do that though, you need to make sure you have a tracking link on that QR code so that it is coming from a first-time donor correspondence. That they're doing it from a first-time donor welcome packet, if that makes sense. So here's a few examples. I'm going to go through just some more inspiration things like I was talking about. Again, there in the middle are the types of photos we sent from our organization. So I just took photos in Canva, sized them at sized a 4x6 Canva template, dropped the photos in, and then took Canva clip art. Says, "You're amazing, many thanks." Dropped our logo in the bottom left-hand corner. We sent those to like MPix, Walgreens, Walmart, wherever we want to send them to, printing them out, and we would just stick them in letters. If you want to go a step further, you could even print out a little label to on the back that says, and you can make it, you know, as personal as you want. Like, we sometimes would do things from the animals who, like, you know, Samson says thank you for rescuing him and making sure he has a happy new life, or whatever you want to put on the back of it. I also, the graphic there, or the photo there on the left, is from a company called Fox Print, FOXPRINT.com. I do not get money from them. I do not in any way endorsing them for any reason other than they do these really cool retro Polaroid looking photos that fit really well into an envelope. And even better, you can put a little bit of copy at the bottom of them. So you can like say, "Thank you for your gift," or whatever. So I love those. They also do stickers. So I would, you know, recommend looking at them if you're thinking about doing something like this. An impact report, again, that is the front of a postcard that we sent every year. And on the back was a very gushy message from me. But it just said, you know, here's what we did. But if you've already sent one for that year, you could send one to first-time donors. If you've already sent one to all your other donors, just to let them know the kind of things that you're doing with the money that comes in from donors. A few more ideas of stickers. So again, those stickers there on the right are from Fox Print. Again, you know, we didn't put our logo on them because we couldn't. They're pretty small. They're probably like 2.5 by 2.5 inches, but people love stickers for some reason. And the other thing we would do sometimes at the holidays, and this is super inexpensive, is we would order these little craft paper ornaments from Amazon, and you get like 100 of them or 500 of them for $10 or something ridiculous, right? And then we would print stickers. And on one side, we would put a photo of a rescue. And on the other side, we put our logo, the two stickers there, and we drop that into a letter. And we say, "Please hang the enclosed, you know, ornament somewhere where you can see it. And it'll remind you of, you know, your big heart and the great work you do to save animals," right? And people will like message us about these, like, "Can I get more of them?" I mean, not a lot, but some people, they just love them. And it was super inexpensive to do, but something, and again, have volunteers do that for you. We had a volunteer come in and stick the stickers on those, and we just had a big pile of them that were ready to go, and we just put them in the letters. Personal videos. So this is actually a video. The video there on the right is me when my hair was shorter with a puppy, but that is actually a video platform. But again, you can take videos of your DD, of an ED, someone you serve, whoever, talking very authentically and warmly, doing a greeting to a donor, or talking about how much they appreciate everything the organization's done for them and how much donors mean to them, and embed those in any of your emails that you send, any of them. And then this remains, I put this in because this remains one of my very favorite things that I ever did when I was at the Humane Society. Is one year at Christmas, we sent a little puzzle. And it was like 4x6. And again, so you could stick it in a regular size envelope. And the puzzle was like $1. And I forgot where I ordered them from, but it says, "Thank you for being a piece of our story." And I don't know, I love that. And I still love that and think it was great. But, you know, we sent a little card that said, "You're the most important part of our life-saving puzzle. Please accept this small token of our gratitude." But you can do that anytime. It's not to be at the holidays. That was just a little holiday gift we sent to certain donors. So finally, I don't know how we've been talking about, like 30 minutes. We got time for Q&A. This is for me. Stewardship works. It costs almost nothing, right? It costs almost nothing but your time. But again, a heartfelt thanks is the best gift you can give a supporter, especially first-time donors. Again, you know, just do it with passion. People act and do things because of the way you make them feel. So if your organization, you're passionate about it and you're passionate about your mission, share that excitement and warmth. Share that passion. Don't be afraid to share that passion. Talk about what you do. Write what you do. Because donors will feel that, and they will, you know, they will engage with that when you're very warm and authentic and genuine, and just, you know, with your gratitude and with your thanks to them. Lastly, QR code there. So if you're not watching this on your phone, if you want to go ahead and grab that, you can use that QR code. There's a freebie with this. I'll also send the link afterwards, but I came up with some cheat sheets. So I did a phone script for you, and also some email cheat sheets for the 3 email series if you want to swipe those. and you can get them at that QR code. And like I said, I'll also send the email out, the link out after this webinar to everyone. If you weren't able to attend or you had to leave early and you're watching this later, you should get that in the email later. So do check that out, because I hopefully will help you out with a little bit of inspiration and, you know, to get you started. And again, if you want to talk to me personally about anything, please feel free to call me. I do offer a free 30-minute discovery call to talk about, you know, what your needs, whether you need help with a campaign, planning, program development, your donor relations strategy. It doesn't matter if you're a one-person team or you have a bigger team. I love to work with everyone. And I've worked with a wide range of organizations. I don't just work with animal welfare organizations. And I would love to talk to you about your needs. I have just opened up my ability to take on year-end campaign clients. So there are very few open, because that has been one of my biggest draws, is helping people with their year-end campaigns. So that is open right now as well. And just FYI. And if you want to connect with me, that is my dog Millie, by the way, who is a rescue. She is my vice president of positive client relations. But there is my LinkedIn, my Instagram, and my Facebook pages. Again, I go by the Nonprofit Maven. So just at the Nonprofit Maven, you should be able to find me. But on LinkedIn, I do go by my name, which is Julie Edwards. But hopefully you'll be able to find me. And again, feel free to reach out. I'm always glad to help people. I know that when I was a DD and then an ED, if it hadn't have been for the graciousness of other nonprofit consultants and people in the field helping me out with questions, I don't know that I would have made it, because I didn't, you know, I didn't know what I was doing at first. You know, I went in, my background is in public relations and marketing, and I had to learn a lot about fundraising, but fundraising is sales, so I could do marketing. So I figured that out. But yeah, I'm always glad to talk to you, to help out in any way I can. And questions.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much, Julie. I did drop in the contact link, and also
Thank you.
is dropping in some links as well. Yeah, I love the part, just like making things fun, like that whole giving like just little gifts that kind of connect with the mission, but also have a fun aspect of things, and like, you know, create memorable, you know, tokens of gratitude. Yeah, what does everybody think online in our audience? Do you have any questions for how to get started? Thank you so much. Feeling invigorated to update and revamp our new donor stewardship. Yeah.
Hey, Katie, sorry.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't take a, oh, and also my coworker Brandy dropped a link into the cheat sheets into the chat too. So Brandy Thomas, if y'all see that, that's also the link to that. If you didn't catch the QR code, you can click through. Thank you so much. Is it Morgiana? I don't know how to pronounce your name. I don't want to pronounce it incorrectly, so I'm going to say thank you so much for that comment. I appreciate that. But yeah, I guess one of the things I always do is I like to come into webinars and give very practical advice, and I don't ever want to overwhelm people with all the choices and all the things. I am, again, a firm believer in doing one or two things and doing them really, really well, rather than trying to do a whole bunch of things and doing them, excuse my French, half-ass. If you watch Ron Swanson in Parks and Rec, you know the quote of don't half-ass anything, half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing, or whatever it is.
Right.
Yes. So, you know, and again, you may have a very small team, you may have a very small budget, but you can make phone calls. You know, if you have a bigger budget, then, you know, get a CRM. If you don't have one, set up an automated email series. Then you get a bigger budget, you know, start sending some welcome packets. You don't have to do everything at once. You don't have to, you know, try to do everything there is to do. Just choose what's the best for you and that you can do within the scope of the resources you have. Good, Janine. Yep, reach out. Feel free to reach out.
Yeah, so many good ideas. Yeah, is there like do you recommend any sort of specific schedule when reaching out to the first-time donors? You said, when should the first thank you be sent again?
Yeah, preferably within 24 hours. Now that is easier to do with email than it is with the letter. But I would say you send an email, the first email within 24 hours or as quickly as possible. Remember the Bloomerang example, he got his email within an hour after his gift. But you can schedule a lot of those things. I'm not really great and adept about the back end of scheduling on email platforms, so I can't really talk to that too much. But a letter, I would try to get it out within a day or two. Again, use volunteers if you can. Again, you could probably print out a whole bunch of letters in advance. They won't be, but it won't have their name on it, so you don't really want to do that. Never mind, I didn't say that. Forget that. But it also depends on, if you're a Monday through Friday organization and, you got donations on the weekend, it may take you a day or two to get them done. Sometimes emails go to junk. Yeah, they do go to junk. You have to be careful about your subject lines to make sure that they don't what they say. But yeah, so.
Yes. Thank you, Alita. Yes. So appreciative of Julie being with us. And I love the picture of you and your little dog, Melly.
I was like, she's asleep on the floor right here and she's snoring, so I hope y'all can't hear her. But I'm sure I don't mind if we get out a minute early. But again, if you think of a question later and want to reach out to me, please feel free to do so. I'm glad to answer any questions of anyone, and I'll try to get back with you as soon as possible. I just onboarded a couple of new clients, so I'm a little hectic right this second, but
Yeah.
get back with you, I promise.
Yeah, I know you've been so busy with folks, and even one of our customers on causevox as well. So
Yes.
then
We're launching a campaign for her today.
happy launch.
Yes. Yes. I'm working with a client who uses causevox, and I've been calling Jenna this week or messaging her like, please help me figure out how to do this and this or where this goes, because I was helping on the back end try to get the page set up, but she's launching a campaign today through causevox.
Yes, Aurora, we will be sending the whole watch. Let me just share my final slides as we wrap up, and then we'll let you out early. I'll be free to do whatever you must do to implement one of your favorite tips from today. Yeah, just like in the chat, can you share like what was your key takeaway from today, or like your next step that you're gonna do? Thinking about, taking all these tips for engaging your supporters. What is the one next step you want to you want to sort of actualize, you want to put into motion? So yeah, as you think about that, I'll just go through our final slides. Free fundraising tips are available every week with causevox. All you have to do is subscribe to our blog. And so I'm going to repost that in the chat. Possibly here. There we go. And then in addition to that, if you are interested in a demo of causevox, say you want to, implement these strategies that you heard today, but you also need a platform to receive donations or do your event fundraising, peer-to-peer DIY campaigns, you can book a demo with us. Or if you have any final questions that you think of later, you can email us at support@causevox.com. And yeah,
I can give a testimonial there. As I said, they're very responsive. It's usually Jenna, I think. Their customer service is great at causevox.
yes, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll be here for you. So yeah, please let us know if you have any final questions. Otherwise, I hope you have an incredible rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you at the next webinar.
Bye.
Okay, bye.